Hey everyone, I noticed a lot of you who are watching and enjoying the content aren't subscribed yet. If you love spine-chilling stories, creepy encounters, and unexplained mysteries, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on the next terrifying upload. It really helps the channel grow and lets me keep bringing you more of the content you love. It started out innocently enough. I was new to online dating and decided to give Hinge a try after hearing good things from friends. As a 28-year-old single woman living in the city, meeting people organically was proving difficult between my busy work schedule and established friend circles. Hinge seemed like a nice middle ground between more casual apps and serious matchmaking sites. After setting up my profile, I was pleased to start getting matches right away. Maintaining conversations was hit or miss, but it was fun meeting new people. One of my early matches was a guy named John. He was attractive enough, and we seemed to have a few things in common. We exchanged some messages about favorite foods and hobbies before the conversation fizzled out. No big deal, I figured, as I moved on to other matches. A few days later, I saw John's face appear again as a match. I thought it was odd since I was pretty sure we had unmatched after our last exchange. But hey, maybe I was mistaken. Or perhaps he had deleted then remade his profile. We had hit it off decently, so I decided to give it another chance. This time the conversation died off even quicker. Once again, I was sure to unmatch John before proceeding with my search. Over the next week, John proceeded to appear as a match no less than 5 more times. Each time I would immediately unmatch and block him, yet his profile kept resurfacing as though it was brand new. It was bizarre and concerning. The photos were always the same ones of John rock climbing or out at trendy bars. Didn't this guy have anything else going on in his life? After the latest reappearance, I decided to message John before unmatching again. I asked him point blank why he kept making new profiles after I had blocked him. To my disbelief, he claimed to have no idea what I was talking about. According to him, this was his only Hinge profile, and the app just kept suggesting me as a match for some reason. I told him that was impossible, and to please stop remaking profiles of me. John swore up and down that he wasn't and suggested I complain to Hinge if I really had that big of an issue with their highly compatible algorithm. His gaslighting only freaked me out more. It was clear John was deliberately making duplicate accounts, but he refused to admit it. I reported his profile to Hinge for harassment before doing one final unmatched and block. However, I knew it was probably futile. Sure enough, 2 days later I opened Hinge to see those hauntingly familiar eyes peering out from a brand new profile. This time the backgrounds of his photos were slightly different, but everything else was exactly the same. Against my better judgment, I engaged with him again and demanded an explanation. John feigned confusion once more and said he didn't know why Hinge's system kept pushing us together. According to him, maybe it was a sign we should meet up in person. That was the last straw for me. I immediately deleted my Hinge account altogether, hoping that would be the end of my nightmare. For a few weeks, life went on as normal. I was extra vigilant whenever out in public by myself, but there were no signs of John. Eventually, I started to relax and think the ordeal was finally over. That sense of relief came crashing down when I received an odd email one night. The sender was unfamiliar, but they somehow knew my name and asked how my recent trip to the art museum had been. I froze. I had just visited there over the weekend and posted a few photos online. The sender went on to say they had seen my pics and thought the Impressionist collection looked amazing there. How had a random person seen these photos I had only shared with close friends? It slowly dawned on me that it could be none other than John. While I had deleted my Hinge account, he was clearly still keeping tabs on me online and knew details about my personal life. I never responded to the email and made all my social media private after that. For weeks, I was constantly looking over my shoulder anytime I went out. Presumably, John still lived in the area of Hinge had initially suggested us, so I feared running into him. Weeks turned into months with no further contact from John. Eventually, my paranoia began to subside, though I remained vigilant about my online presence. Then, out of the blue, I got a notification about a new follower on Instagram. It was an account with no posts, but the profile picture was unmistakably John staring back at me. The username was a string of random numbers. My blocked list was at max capacity, so I couldn't block the account. Within minutes, a message popped up from the same account. "Hey, long time no see." My hands shaking, I immediately deleted my Instagram account and removed all public traces of myself online. I still don't know how John continually finds me, but it's clear he's created countless fake accounts across different platforms for the sole purpose of following my digital footprint. It's been 6 months now without any contact, but I still constantly brace for the day his face emerges again from the void. No matter what I do, I can't shake the visceral fear that he's out there lurking and waiting to reconnect. I decided to move to a new city across the country, hoping the added distance would deter him. For the first few months in my new home, life was peaceful without any signs of John. Just as I was starting to settle in and gain comfort in my fresh start, the familiar nightmare crept up again. I was out grocery shopping when I rounded the corner of an aisle and found myself face to face with those haunting eyes. John stood right in front of me, a sly grin spreading over his face. "Funny running into you here," he said casually as my body froze in panic. I abandoned my cart and rushed out of the store, my pulse racing. How had he tracked me down so far from home? It confirmed my worst fear. No matter where I went or how many precautions I took, John would keep finding ways to infiltrate my life both online and in person. I became a recluse after that, refusing to leave my apartment except for work where security was tight. Any social media accounts I made using aliases would inevitably attract follow requests from blank profiles eerily similar to the ones John had created before. My only solace was changing my number and not giving it out to anyone new. But even that felt like just a temporary fix. Sure enough, after a few months, my phone buzzed with a new text from an unknown number. "No place is too far to find you." My hands trembled as I read John's words over and over. He could get to me whenever he wanted. That much was clear. No police report or restraining order would likely stop him at this point. My life as I knew it was over, unless I could figure out a way to completely disappear off the grid. But could I ever truly escape those haunting eyes? Running was futile. John would always find a way back in. He made that disturbingly clear. In a last-ditch effort, I deleted all traces of my identity and fled to a small town in the middle of nowhere. I cut off contact with everyone from my past life, changed my name and appearance, and got a cash job as a waitress at a local diner. For the first year, I barely slept, constantly expecting John to walk through the door. But as time passed with no sign of him, I slowly began to relax into my new routine. I made friends with some regulars at the diner and joined a local book club, though I was always vague about my past. After 2 years in hiding, I finally felt secure enough to open up to Sarah, my closest friend there. That night, there was a knock at my door. My chest tightened in fear as I looked through the peephole. But it wasn't John on the other side. It was Sarah, holding a small cake. "I wanted to surprise you for your birthday," she said with a smile. For the first time in years, I cried tears of joy. Maybe I was finally free. It was just another night swiping on Hinge when his profile popped up. Derek, 31, from Seattle. In his photos, he was handsome, outdoorsy, standing on mountain peaks and posing with a surfboard. His prompts showed he liked to travel and was looking for a relationship. He seemed totally my type, so I liked his profile, and to my surprise, we matched right away. When he messaged me, I was thrilled. We exchanged a few messages that night and really hit it off. He asked me out for that Saturday, and I happily accepted. I was so excited for my date with Derek. Saturday took forever to arrive. When I got to the restaurant, there he was, just as cute as his photos. We sat down and started chatting over drinks. He told me stories of his recent travels through Asia, backpacking alone and seeing amazing sights. He talked about growing up in a small town in Oregon and how his family died when he was young. Everything just flowed so naturally between us. He was charming, easy to talk to, and seemed genuinely interested in me. After dinner, we went for a walk through the dark city streets. We just couldn't stop talking. As we turned down an empty alley, he suddenly pulled me close and kissed me. I felt a rush of excitement and slight unease. When he walked me home, he asked to come inside. I declined, saying I wanted to take things slow. He seemed annoyed for a split second, but quickly smiled and made plans for another date that weekend. I couldn't believe I had met such an incredible guy. The next day, I went to message Derek, but his profile was gone. I figured maybe he had deleted Hinge now that we had exchanged numbers. I tried calling him, but got an automated message saying the number was disconnected. None of his social media accounts existed anymore either. It was like he had vanished into thin air. I started to feel panicked, wondering if I had imagined the whole thing. But then a few days later, my friend Lucy called me. She was so excited to tell me about this amazing new guy she had met, Derek. He had the same job, was from the same area, loved traveling just like the Derek I had gone out with. But as she kept talking, I realized some things didn't add up. The details in his stories were a little different. The more she told me, the more uneasy I felt. I did some more digging and eventually found a couple other women posting online about similar eerie encounters with a Derek who had disappeared after a first date. They all described essentially the same person with slightly different background stories. It became clear there was something very strange and disturbing going on here. I called the other women I found, and we pieced together what had happened. This Derek clearly had some kind of twisted routine. He would match with women on dating apps using pictures that weren't his. He'd take them on an amazing first date, share some made-up stories about his life, then disappear. It seemed he was almost practicing playing a character, working to get the details just right. But why? Just some creep getting a thrill? Or was there something more sinister at play? The not knowing was almost worse than the truth. My perfect first date was ruined, turned into something that gave me chills. I started having nightmares of Derek appearing in my home, his charming facade melting away to reveal something evil underneath. I kept expecting him to show up again, to message me and pretend nothing had happened. Part of me wished I could go back to when I first swiped right, before I knew the charming guy I met didn't actually exist. But the truth was, he was probably out there right now, starting the cycle again with some other unsuspecting woman. Maybe his backstory would be a little different this time. Maybe she wouldn't catch on to his disappearing act as quickly as I did. An icy chill ran down my spine, imagining where a night alone with Derek could lead for the next girl. And there was no way for me to stop it. All I could do was learn from the experience and be more cautious. I wasn't going to let one bizarre and terrifying encounter stop me from trying to find real love. But next time, I'll make sure to look a little closer before I leap, because finding out the charming stranger you kiss might not be human at all changes you. Next time, I'll trust my instincts. There won't be another Derek. In the following weeks, I couldn't stop obsessing over what had happened. I scoured the internet for any clues, any trace of Derek or other women who had met him. I knew deep down there was likely nothing I could do, but I had to try. One night, I got a message request on Instagram from a random guy named Alex. He said he had seen my comments online about Derek and thought he could help. He sent me an address and told me if I wanted answers, to meet him there the next night. I knew it seemed crazy to go meet some stranger like that, but my desire for the truth overwhelmed my caution. I had to take the chance. The next night, I drove out to an empty parking garage downtown. As I pulled up, a figure emerged from the shadows. I got out and cautiously approached. It was Alex. The revelations that followed shattered my whole perception of reality. Derek wasn't human at all. Alex had been tracking him and others like him, entities that fed off human connection. By the time I said goodbye to Alex, the sun was rising. I didn't feel scared anymore, just determined. There were more Dereks out there, yes, but now there was also me. I went home and slept better than I had in weeks. When I woke, I knew what I had to do. I set up a fake dating profile carefully designed to attract these creatures. Night after night, I would match with them, let them think they were manipulating me, then confront them when they least expected it. Some would simply vanish when exposed, but a few times, things got dangerous. Still, I had to keep going. It's been months now since that first fateful date with Derek. My double life continues, but I'm making a difference. These things are out there pretending to be human, preying on people searching for love, but I'm fighting back, one lure at a time. My hope is to find the source someday and end this for good. Until then, I'll keep hunting in the shadows, revealing the monsters hiding behind charming smiles and well-practiced stories. The dating world is a little safer now thanks to me, even if no one else knows it. And I'll never stop watching, waiting, ready to step out of the darkness and into the light. I still get chills when I think back to that night I matched with Jake on Hinge. At first, everything seemed totally normal. We exchanged some messages on the app and he seemed nice and genuine. When he asked me out to dinner at a restaurant near my apartment, I was excited to finally meet him in person. We met up at the restaurant and hit it off right away. The conversation flowed easily, and we really seemed to connect. After we ate, Jake suggested we take a walk around the neighborhood since it was a warm evening. As we strolled, I pointed out my apartment building in the distance. Immediately, his eyes lit up with recognition. "Oh, I know that building. It has great views from the units that face the park," he remarked. "Don't you live in 3E?" I was taken aback. How could he possibly know my exact apartment number? I tried to play it cool, but his specific knowledge of my building already felt strange. I replied, "Actually, I live in 3B, but pretty close guess." An uncomfortable silence followed. Desperate to change the subject, I made a joke about having a nosy neighbor across the hall in 3E who always seemed to be peeking out his peephole when I walked by. Jake completely ignored my comment and continued on enthusiastically. 3E has those great built-in bookshelves, and the bedroom is painted a really peaceful blue color, isn't it? My heart dropped into my stomach. Those were indeed distinct features of my own apartment, 3 billions. There was no way he could know those details unless he had been inside my unit before. I felt a chill run down my spine despite the warm night air. I stopped walking and confronted him, asking how he knew the specifics of my apartment's layout and decor. But Jake quickly became evasive, mumbling that he must have gotten the unit number wrong. He casually suggested we call it a night. As Jake walked me back to my building, I racked my brain trying to figure out how he could be so familiar with my apartment. I lived alone and certainly hadn't had him over before. That's when I remembered the leasing office mentioning that the previous tenant in 3 Billions also happened to be named Jake. The next day, still unsettled by the bizarre incident, I called the leasing office to inquire about the previous resident in my unit. As I suspected, they confirmed that a guy named Jake had lived there until about 6 months ago when he moved out at the end of his lease term. Immediately, my mind raced back to all the strange interactions on Hinge where Jake seemed to know too much about me, my neighborhood, my habits, my interests. I realized he must have been virtually stalking me by creating fake profiles just to insert himself into my life. In hindsight, there were so many red flags I overlooked. The brand new Hinge profile with only a few photos, the vague personal details about his job and background, how he steered our conversations back to my exact neighborhood and even my apartment complex. He had clearly fixated on his former building and apartment for some disturbing reason. I never heard from Jake again after that unnerving night, but I remained vigilant about my surroundings and installed extra locks on my doors. I kept imagining him lurking around my building, trying to find excuses to get inside and relive his attachment to 3 Billions. Thankfully, I never saw him again in person either. Eventually, I felt comfortable enough to start dating again. However, the experience shook me to my core and shattered my trust. I still hesitate meeting matches in person, especially if they seem overly interested in my address or neighborhood right off the bat, and I am extra cautious not to reveal too many personal details before that first in-person meeting in a very public place. What happened with Jake taught me important lessons about protecting my privacy and safety when interacting with strangers online. I try not to let the experience deter me from putting myself out there entirely. However, the chilling thought of Jake's disturbing obsession with my apartment still gives me goosebumps. I wonder if he ever found another tenant to totally unsuspectingly let him into a place he felt an attachment to but did not belong in anymore. One thing is for sure, I will never make the mistake of dismissing questionable behavior or odd coincidences again when it comes to online dating. Staying vigilant and trusting my instincts could mean the difference between a fun date and a terrifying invasion of my privacy, or worse. It has been almost a year since my frightening encounter with Jake. My new boyfriend, Matt, who I actually met through work friends, has helped me feel safe in my home again. Matt is patient and understanding about my hesitancy to reveal my address or other personal details, given what I went through with Jake. And he's always mindful about not asking too many prying questions or snooping in my apartment. Just recently, Matt and I were snuggled up watching a movie at my place. He jokingly asked if we could switch apartments because mine had a better layout and view than his. I must have noticeably tensed up because Matt's face filled with concern. "What's wrong? Did I say something to upset you?" he asked. I realized I had never told him about my experience with Jake because it's not something I like reliving. But given Matt's confusion, I knew it was important to open up about that traumatic night. Matt listened attentively and offered words of reassurance as I recounted the details. When I finished, he hugged me close and said, "I'm so sorry you went through that, but I promise I would never want to make you feel unsafe or uncomfortable in your own home. This is your space." I could hear the sincerity in Matt's voice. His understanding and respect for my boundaries after hearing about my past trauma only confirmed that he was nothing like Jake. With Matt, my apartment feels like a sanctuary again, rather than a space haunted by someone else's unsettling obsession. While what happened with Jake still creeps into the back of my mind sometimes when I'm walking alone or hear an odd noise, having a caring partner like Matt by my side reminds me that I do not need to let past fears control my future happiness. I had been using Hinge for a few months after getting out of a long-term relationship that ended really badly. My ex, Amanda, had become overly possessive and controlling towards the end of our 3-year relationship, and I was looking forward to moving on and meeting new people. One day, I came across a profile that caught my attention right away. The woman in the pictures looked strangely familiar, even though I was sure we had never met before. As I read through her profile, I realized with a shock that it was nearly identical to Amanda's old Hinge profile. The same cute photos showing her playing with her dog, baking cupcakes and posing in front of a mountain landscape. The short bio describing her love of hiking, affinity for horror films, and hometown in Denver matched my ex's exactly. At first, I thought it must be some kind of weird coincidence. Maybe this woman just happened to closely resemble Amanda and shared a lot of the same interests and background. I decided to message her and get to know her better. As we started chatting, things got progressively more unsettling. She made references to inside jokes I had shared with Amanda, asked about my family members by name, and mentioned specific details about places we had visited together, trips that I had never discussed with anyone else. With a growing sense of unease, I asked her bluntly if she was my ex or knew her in some way. Her tone suddenly shifted, becoming cold and hostile. "I know everything about you and what you've been up to since we broke up," she wrote. "Did you really think you could just move on and I wouldn't find out?" My heart dropped into my stomach. This wasn't just someone who resembled Amanda. This was her, taunting me under a fake identity. She must have created this profile just to spy on me and the new life I was trying to build without her. I immediately reported and blocked the account. But over the next few weeks, I became paranoid that Amanda was still watching me through Hinge. Every match felt like it could potentially be another fake account she had set up to manipulate me. I scrutinized every picture and profile description, looking for similarities to my ex. When I matched with an attractive, friendly girl named Jess who seemed completely normal, I grilled her with questions designed to prove she wasn't actually my obsessive ex in disguise. She was understandably put off by my suspicious interrogation about her background and family history. I realized then that I was letting Amanda's toxic behavior prevent me from connecting genuinely with new people. Eventually, I decided to delete my Hinge profile entirely and take a break from dating apps. I needed time to regain my sense of security and trust before putting myself out there again. Although I had changed my number and blocked Amanda on all social media platforms we had ever shared, the Hinge incident showed she was still finding ways to infiltrate my life. After a few months of focusing on myself, my own interests, and spending time with close friends, I felt more stable and optimistic. When I re-downloaded Hinge, I was cautious at first, keeping a watchful eye out for anything resembling my ex. But as time passed without any sign of Amanda's trickery, I became more confident that she had given up this disturbing catfishing game. Or so I thought. After a few good first dates with girls from the app, I matched with a very attractive woman named Samantha. She had flowing red hair, a radiant smile, and a bubbly personality that drew me in quickly. We really hit it off and exchanged several long messages a day. After a week, we exchanged numbers and started texting frequently outside of Hinge. Samantha was funny, smart, and seemed genuinely interested in me as a person. Then one Saturday night, after flirting over text all day, I asked Samantha if she would like to meet up for a drink sometime soon. Her tone suddenly changed. The quick, enthusiastic responses came to a halt. An hour later, a new message came through. "I can't believe you really think you could replace me." The blood drained from my face. This wasn't just a coincidence or mix-up. I knew then without a doubt that this was Amanda posing as someone else. She had catfished me again in an elaborate scheme to gain my trust and affection. I felt violated and disgusted that she would go so far just to manipulate me. I immediately blocked the new number, but I was also angry with myself for falling for her act, once again letting her deceive me and poison what could have developed into a real relationship. Over the next month, I became hypervigilant, scrutinizing even the smallest details of the women I matched with on Hinge. I searched their names, looked for duplicate images that could be fake. While none of them turned out to be Amanda, I could tell my suspicions were hindering any chance of forming genuine connections. Finally, I decided enough was enough. Amanda had already taken so much from me in our past relationship, and I refused to hand over control of my dating life to her too. So I tried a different tactic. I deleted Hinge once again and signed up for a new app called Inner Circle that had an extensive multi-step screening process. Each user had to get approved through background checks before joining. It was a drastic measure, but it worked. The extensive verification helped ease my anxieties about being fooled again. And after matching with Andrea, who passed the extensive screening process, we hit it off immediately and have been dating seriously for several months now. I still have my guard up in the back of my mind, worried Amanda may find another way back in. But I'm trying not to let that paranoia and fear hold me back anymore. Andrea has been patient and understanding about the situation with my ex, helping me work through lingering doubts and rebuild trust in relationships. I finally feel ready to close the door on my toxic past and look ahead to a much happier future. It all started when I matched with her on Hinge last month. As the host of a popular true crime podcast, I sometimes get fans messaging me on dating apps. But Ashley seemed different. She was truly invested in discussing my latest case, not just aiming for a date with her favorite podcaster. The case centered around the disappearance of a local woman from my hometown. I was exploring a potential tie to a serial killer active in the area at the time. Ashley latched onto this theory immediately and kept pushing me to investigate further. She referenced details about the case I hadn't even discussed on my show yet, things only the police or killer could know. I just assumed she was a fellow armchair detective who had done her research. We chatted for hours that first night on Hinge. I was up late scribbling notes about all Ashley's theories and avenues to explore. Her insights felt so promising for the episode I was developing. I decided to suggest meeting up for coffee to talk more. But when I opened Hinge the next morning, Ashley was gone. Her profile had vanished like she was never there at all. I checked my messages, even those were wiped from our history. I racked my brain trying to remember her last name or any identifying details. Nothing. I spent weeks searching for any trace of her. I couldn't find a single photo that matched her profile pictures. Reverse image searches turned up nothing. She wasn't on any other social media I could find. It was like she appeared on Hinge that one night just to feed me information and then disappeared back into the void. I kept digging into the theories Ashley had proposed, feeling almost haunted by her now disembodied voice in my head. The details were so specific, things no podcast listener could realistically piece together. She theorized the killer had used a specific make and model of car, used back roads through a certain neighborhood to avoid detection, and speculated on the motives in a way that matched what police told me, but had never been made public. The further I followed the leads Ashley provided, the more unsettled I became. I couldn't escape the creeping sense that Ashley knew more than she should, that perhaps she wasn't just an armchair detective, but actually had inside knowledge of the crime. Could she be an estranged relative of the killer, someone close trying to indirectly confess, a former girlfriend with a guilty conscience, or even an alternate persona of the killer themselves, taunting me now for entertainment? Without Ashley to explain her bizarre intimacy with the details, the case became downright chilling. My sleep suffered as I lay awake wondering about her true identity and motives. I debated whether to bring my concerns to the police, but I had little to go on, just the paranoia of some messages from a woman who wasn't even real. In the end, I distanced myself from the case for my own sake. My producer took the reins on the episode we had planned, and I made excuses about pursuing other stories. It was all I could do to stop spiraling. I couldn't stand letting this Ashley, whoever or whatever she was, get any more embedded in my head. Now, months later, the case remains open. No breaks or revelations since my messages with the mystery Hinge woman. Sometimes I still feel her presence, though, urging me to pick up the thread and unravel what she started. A missing woman is still out there, waiting for justice. But in the end, I had to choose my work or my peace of mind. For now, the latter has won out. But I still can't help wondering if I made the right choice, or if I should have kept following where Ashley led me into the darkness. Lately, the case has been weighing on me more than ever. Maybe it's the upcoming one-year anniversary of the woman's disappearance, or knowing the killer is likely still out there while the trail goes cold. I've avoided diving back in, but the pull is getting strong. Just last week, I found myself driving down the back roads Ashley had mentioned, imagining how the killer might have navigated them unseen. I sat outside the bar the woman was last seen leaving and watched the patrons, wondering if the monster could be among them. It felt good to be doing something again instead of pushing it out of my mind. But the further I get pulled back in, the more I worry that I'm playing right into Ashley's hands, that she's still out there, monitoring my investigation and subtly pushing me where she wants me to go. I know I said I wouldn't let her dictate my actions anymore, but her leads are still the best I've got. She knew the intricate details that someone bearing the truth would know. I may not like being her puppet, but if she's my only shot at answers, don't I owe it to the victim to follow through? My producer has been checking in more, concerned about me reopening old wounds, and part of me shares those fears. I still have no idea who or what Ashley really is, or what continuing to engage could unleash. But if she pops up again dangling new clues, could I really turn away? Wouldn't I at least need to know why she's so intimately close to this? For now, I'm taking baby steps, driving those old roads again, digging up my case notes, letting my mind wander to the possibilities, both disturbing and promising. If Ashley returns, I can't say for sure I won't follow her siren call back into the depths. Justice for the dead woman deserves that much. But I need to be cautious, guard my sanity, and safety above all. This time, if I do go down the rabbit hole, it will be with eyes wide open. Ashley won't catch me unaware again. Swiping on Hinge had become part of my nightly routine. But one evening, I came across a profile that stopped me in my tracks. The guy staring back at me from the photos looked eerily familiar, though I couldn't quite pinpoint why. As I took in his boyish grin and sandy blonde hair, a name surfaced in my mind: Alex. Alex from high school. My stomach sank as memories of Alex came flooding back. We had been best friends all through high school. We were both sci-fi geeks who could quote every line from Star Wars and debated superhero powers endlessly. We dreamed of road tripping across the country together one day and moving to Silicon Valley to launch the next big tech startup. But during senior year, Alex suddenly vanished. He stopped coming to school and didn't respond to my panicked texts asking if he was okay. His social accounts went dark, and my calls went straight to voicemail. It was like he had just disappeared off the face of the earth. The police couldn't find any leads, and Alex's family was strangely evasive when I pressed them for information. I was racked with worry about what could have happened to him. His disappearance haunted me for years after. And now, here Alex was on Hinge years later, looking almost the same as the last time I saw him. My hands trembled as I swiped right to match with him. Could this really be my long-lost friend? Or was it some cruel impersonator? But as we started messaging, he really did seem to be Alex. He referenced inside jokes only the two of us would know, places we hung out back in the day, and memories from the countless hours we spent geeking out together. I was bursting with questions. Where have you been all these years? Why did you leave without saying goodbye? What happened to you? But I played it cool so I wouldn't scare him off. After some pleasant small talk, I asked if he wanted to meet up in person to catch up. He readily agreed, and we decided to grab dinner at our favorite pizza spot from high school. I was full of nervous excitement as the day of our reunion approached. I would finally get the closure I had wondered about for so long. But the morning we were supposed to meet up, Alex went radio silent. No response to my still on for later text, and when I checked Hinge again, his profile had disappeared. Just like before, he had vanished without any explanation. Confused and unsettled, I did some investigating online, and I uncovered something chilling. Other guys from our high school had been matched with Alex on Hinge recently too. In every case, he had reached out enthusiastically, reminisced pleasantly for a few days, made plans to get together, and then pulled a Houdini right before their reunions. What kind of messed up head games was he playing? I contacted the other matches to compare experiences. They were just as freaked out and disturbed as I was. It seemed Alex was intentionally seeking out old friends just to toy with our emotions and stir up painful memories from the past. But why? What satisfaction did he get from screwing with our heads like this? We may never understand his motives or get the closure we hoped for, but the bizarre experience left me reeling. They say the past stays with you, but I never expected it to stalk me years later on a dating app. Alex's ghost has haunted me and who knows how many others. His mysterious vanishing acts never fully explained. Wherever Alex is now, I hope he finds peace with the demons that caused him to disappear from our lives all those years ago. As for me, I deleted Hinge, unwilling to reopen old wounds that are impossible to heal. What mattered was moving forward, not getting entangled in the shadows of a past that would likely always feel unfinished.